today for our half-hour webinar, doing something a little different to see if we can maybe have some of these a little more frequently and maybe a little bit less time. We are going to record this event. We had a number of people that wanted the recordings to share with others or couldn't make it today, so I'm going to go ahead and say cue the recording. I have Steve Collier in with me today, and this is Dan Paquette at Key Methods. So we'll go ahead and get started with our webinar. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat bar there, and Steve will either stop me if it's pertinent to do so while we're giving the presentation, or we'll pool them all up at the end. We will have some time for questions and answers at the end. So today, our topic is really about selecting the right hardware when it comes that time. And when we get started, we obviously want to find out what are the needs first. So we'll go over a little bit of making sure you got a good checklist before you go down that road of selection. Then we're going to look at different form factors, all the different sizes and shapes and device styles, etc., that are out there now for us. And then what operating system are we going to put on it? So again, we've got a number of choices to make in that area. Then we'll talk a little bit about trying to find a standard, especially for your business or small business, having a standard and sticking to it, which sometimes is hard to do, but sticking to it does have its benefits, so we want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Then we'll talk about the bring your own device phenomenon that's going on right now, and is it right for you? If not, when might it be right for you? And we'll talk a little about some of the pros and cons there. And of course, if we have anything else, like I said, we'll have some questions at the end. And I'll apologize in advance. I've got that cold that's going around, so I'm doing my best trying not to get Steve sick here in the office with me. But I apologize if you get a cough or two. Alrighty, so one of the first things that I like to think about when you're identifying your needs is to really jot down and make yourself a list of what software and peripherals, the things you're going to connect into the computer that you need to run. The best way to do that is to hit your program's icon and actually navigate, or go to the control panel and look at the installed applications on your computer. If you have any doubt, you can go to those software applications online and kind of look for requirements. But generally, you're probably going to be buying something better than what you have now, so there's a high probability that it'll work. I would hone in on the operating systems and make sure that whatever it is that you're trying to run will run on the newer operating systems, because that's generally where you're going to run into some issues. As far as peripherals, watch for anything you might have with serial ports or parallel ports, or any kind of old connectivity that might need to hook up to your computers. Again, some of the newer ones, don't have CD drives, they don't have floppy drives, they don't have certain things in them anymore. So make sure you got software that you can load with those things. And also pay attention to some of the newer connectivity options that are on a lot of our computers. Even USB 3 is a real, popular high-speed data connection. Watch for those sorts of things so you know what you want on your new computer from a connectivity perspective. And again, that backwards compatibility, make sure, like I said, your stuff will run and on older software. Next thing to ask yourself is, how long do you need to make this last? So I'm usually a proponent of making at least a 2 or 3 year selection. You're probably going to keep your computer around for at least that long. You may be lucky enough to, maybe be the president or owner of a company, and you can do a trickle-down effect every year or so. But still, you probably want someone else to be able to benefit from that a couple of years after you're done with it too. So, so kind of look at that 3-year mark and think about what your needs might be out a couple of years, and certainly plan for some growth. And when we look at growth, the CPU, the actual processor on it, but especially your drive space and memory. So some of the computing stuff that's going to come out later on will likely require more horsepower, so to speak, than what you might need for today. So make sure you buy ahead a little bit so you're not grumbling, a year or two from now with a new device you just spent all that money on. One of the things that we really need to pay attention to now is device storage versus external storage. So we've got a lot of options now, and especially with some of the SSD drives, which tend to be a little bit smaller but a whole lot faster, you need to make sure that you've got enough onboard storage for not only your applications, but things like pictures or music or whatever else you might be storing on there. Make sure you've got enough storage space, but make sure that you're leveraging things like external hard drives, maybe external thumb drives. We have the cloud, so we have a lot of places we can store what I'm going to call more static data than the stuff that you actually need to run locally. Another consideration is just to think about, are you running most of your stuff on your device, or are you running most of your stuff in a cloud and your device is really more of an access point or an end point? So that helps you. If you've got most of the horsepower running in the cloud and most of the storage in the cloud, maybe you can get by with a little less expensive device and maybe spend your money on a bigger display or better sound or something that's a little fancier that's not into the horsepower range. So that's certainly something that I would consider. And like I said, you may not need as much if you're in the cloud. Understanding what your performance needs are. Right now, a lot of the processors that are coming out are probably almost overkill for what you need. But certainly, if you stick with maybe an Intel processor example, understand the differences between an i3, 5, 7, et cetera, and know what you actually need. It's easy to overbuy, particularly on some of the processors, for be spending money that you don't need to. But I would definitely make sure you look at the added cost of a solid-state drive. There's no moving parts. They're much faster. They're very reliable. And I don't know what it is, but when you start up that PC in the morning and it's seconds instead of minutes, it just makes the day start off so much better. But you don't generally get as much storage space for that. So one thing you might want to consider, and we do this with a lot of the PCs that we send out, is to have a combination where your operating system is actually on an SSD, and then you have a little slower drive for more capacity. So you can actually put both into a computer, and that's a really good idea to consider as well. So then we look at a form factor. The very first thing is, how portable does this thing need to be, or is this just going to sit on a desktop or not, because that's going to make a large difference in the direction of your choice there. But the other one to consider is whether or not you want it to be touch enabled. So if you're in a Windows 10 environment, it's built around touch. There's lots of tablets and laptops that you pretty much all have touch screens nowadays. But if you're buying a PC, sometimes we don't really think about having a touch monitor. Some of the all-in-ones have touch monitors built into them, but you can actually buy monitors that are touch enabled as well. And certainly if you're used to maybe a laptop that's got a touch screen and you go to a PC, you're probably going to be smudging the screen and not getting any effect. So give that a thought or two before you purchase. From a size perspective, it's not just about the size of the device itself, but be mindful of things like the screen size, especially if you're looking at laptops and tablets. It's great to get something that's small and handy and you can throw it in a briefcase or a suitcase or whatever, but if it's too small, you're going to be kicking yourself because you won't be able to see the screen very well. And same thing with some of the keyboards. They can get pretty small, so make sure you put your fingers on there, do a little typing, make sure that it doesn't make too much noise, get a feel for the keyboard. And the touch pads as well, and some of you that are old school, even the touch pointers, what's your style of the way that you like to drive the mouse around if you don't happen to have a physical mouse with you. Weight's always a concern. Power needs, a lot of the devices that are coming out do not have replaceable batteries in them, so it's not like you can carry a spare around like we did in the good old days. Many of your laptops that are business grade, maybe you can do that, but if you got a fixed battery, you better understand, what your needs are and how long you need that guy to last. And then, of course, I like the cool factor or the style. If you're into that sort of thing, for some people that may be at the top of the list. If you need a piece of fruit on the outside of it and needs to be pink, then you're probably going to be going down a very specific path. If you don't really care and black is okay, then you probably have a lot more options at your disposal. So this is mostly about business, but I did want to talk a teeny bit about wearable tech because it is coming into our industry more and more. Again, your big concerns there many times are battery life, especially if you're looking at watches and things. There are some of them that literally, can't even get you through a day, and that's very depressing. Spending a lot of money and you got to take the thing off and charge it all the time. I definitely would suggest finding something that's at least water resistant. It's not waterproof. And if you're going to strap it on your body, take some advantages there of some of the health benefits with the step counters and heart rate monitors and GPS, etc., from a health perspective. But on the business side, there's some really nice things about kind of pairing with your phone or doing things with Bluetooth where you can get quick messaging so you can, just glance down at your wrist and see, how important something may be, keep you on time from a scheduling perspective, those sorts of things. And actually a lot of those devices now do even have the cellular built into them, and you can actually use them as a phone. So, all worth considering. There's kind of a little quick shot of some of the many devices that are out there. There's a ton, and there's getting to be more and more every day. So going from the teeny that you might wear on your wrist, we generally go into more of a mini form factor. And when we're in this world, we're really talking about compute sticks and minis. And the compute sticks, I don't have as many people that are using these as maybe they probably should, but these are great for just shoving into a projector, shoving it into a large widescreen TV. So basically anything that's got an HDMI connection to it, you just plug this thing in, kind of like your Chromecasts and other devices that are out there, but it's a full-blown PC. It's got an Intel processor in it. It's got wireless networking. It's got Bluetooth, so you can have keyboards and mice. Usually have Windows 10 embedded on it. So about the only thing it doesn't have is a whole lot of drive space. But again, if you're heavy into cloud resources and the bulk of that is out in the cloud, these things work great. I use this on my big screen downstairs and put it in and pull up pictures and plan for vacations and all kinds of cool stuff sitting on the couch. So those are kind of cool. But from a business perspective, really, really good in things like projectors in conference rooms or on the back of a PC for like a heads-up display, those kinds of things. On the minis, so on this one you can see basically right here is where the mini's attached to the back of the display. So this is one of the new Lenovo minis. We actually have one of these in our conference room. And they work great. You can glue them under a desk. You can mount them all over the place, including right on the back of the screen. Those are like full power, full processor. They're just as good as any PC that you can get out there. So good option there. When we talk about laptops and tablets, generally you're paying more money for less power than you do a desktop. That's just the way that it is. You're paying for batteries, you're paying for engineering and design, etc. So if you can get away with a desktop and you really want your biggest bang for the buck, make sure you're doing that. But if you do go with a laptop, another thing to consider is making sure you've got a good docking station set up so that you can actually use it for a desktop/laptop, and you can almost use it in a 2-for-1 situation. So right here we've got I think there's a ThinkPad Carbon. It's one of the thinner, lighter weight ones that Lenovo has. Here's a series of tablets. And again, when I look at tablets, great for reading email, great for checking your schedule, great for viewing pictures, taking photos in the field, but generally your typing capability may be a little restricted, and you're usually not having as much drive space. But again, if you're heavy into cloud resources, again, maybe a good option with a little Bluetooth keyboard kind of a thing. And then, of course, we've got our Apple MacBook, which is also very popular with a lot of people, especially if you're into graphics. And then this is actually my setup. So I have a Microsoft Surface Pro with a docking station. and I'm basically powering 3 monitors as well as the monitor on the device, and using the docking station. I'm hooked into scanners and wireless mice and pretty much anything that I want to do. So again, that's one good way to kind of leverage get something that can meet the needs of a desktop as well as the needs of a laptop when you're traveling, etc. So we got to load them up with some kind of operating system, and usually I say stick with whatever ecosystem that you already have or that you belong to. So if you are more of an Android individual or an iOS from an Apple perspective, you probably have a lot invested in those apps, music, media, that kind of stuff. So just kind of stick with whatever you're used to. Chromebooks and tablets. And again, I kind of put them on a little bit of a tier by themselves because Chromebooks are this kind of like a laptop, but not really, kind of like a tablet, but not really world. Again, it's good if you are all Google and you like the whole G Suite stuff, but there's a lot of applications you just flat can't install on Chromebooks. So if you want it as a cheap laptop replacement, I would shy away from that. But if it's just something you want to view email and do some docs and stuff, you can do that as well. Key trigger here is to watch for home versus professional and business. So when you're buying these things, it's a good indicator if it says home on it that it is residential grade. And that's probably even talking about the hardware as well as the operating system. They kind of pair them up together. If you're seeing stuff that says pro or business or enterprise on it, typically you've probably got a machine that is capable to be in your business environment. It's required to be able to hook up to your networks at your office. Lots of times they have compliancy stuff, drive encryption, and all kinds of features that you will not get out of home. We run into this many times at the office where somebody buys something and asks us to hook it up, and we end up having to have them do an upgrade, spend a massive amount of time and money to do that upgrade. So we don't want to do that. Whatever you do, you want to start getting some standards, particularly in a business environment. And certainly I would make sure that you have business grade machines that are meant for a business. I know this is more expensive up front, but it does save you a lot of money in the long run. Typically, business machines actually have warranties. Most of the stuff we sell from Key Methods has 3-year business warranties on them. And the nice thing is you can actually get spare parts. So if something does go wrong, we can actually have those delivered, and there's common builds, etc. The thing I like to make sure that everyone understands, you get what you pay for. And the thing that I like to use is an HD television example. So I think all of us have been down to Costco or a big box store. They all have the same specs. They all say that they're HD TVs, etc. But man, you walk between them and one's crystal clear and you go, wow, no wonder they're charging X thousands of dollars for that one versus the one sitting right next to it that's the same size, same specs and everything, but just doesn't look the same.
Another thing I'll add in there, Dan, is a lot of times when you're at a big box store, you'll see a great deal on a PC, but that's because it's actually been in their inventory for a couple of years. It's an old machine. There's no more replacement parts for it. That's another thing that we see a lot.
Yeah, and typically, like I said, those are probably having home operating systems on them, one, and then the other is, even the name brands, the Dells and the Lenovo's and the HPs, etc., they have their lesser brands in them that are meant for residential, versus you go online, you can tell when you get into the higher end, and they all switch over to the professional versions of the operating systems. That's usually when you're into a business grade store. So great point there, Steve.
Don't be fooled by those closeout deals. You end up paying one way or the other.
Exactly. So that's kind of it for the big box stores. Again, if it's just for home, etc. Man, I've even done that with my wife and bought her a PC, and then I'm just kicking myself in the rear for the next year because I just spent all that money and she wasn't happy. Other thing to kind of watch for, I call them white label or custom builds. So there are times when people put things together. And if you're the type that you want to put together a PC and order all the parts and do it yourself and do it from a hobby perspective, that's great. but that's really difficult in a business environment. I mean, we run into all kinds of issues with software not running, and you get all the software manufacturer and they won't, do anything because they blame it all on the hardware. It's kind of a bummer. Again, talked a little bit about that Pro Enterprise version. Watch for that. Certainly that should be your standard if you're in any kind of a business environment. Trying to mix and match is just a disaster. So how about bringing your own stuff? Bring your own device. This is more and more common every day, especially with cloud resources where, typically your entire desktop is in the cloud and all your stuff is in the cloud. The thing that I would caution there is just make sure that it's really clear that you're the business owner and that you own and manage the software that's on the thing. So in many cases, you're using your license keys with Office 365 or others. You don't want people thinking that if something happens, they go home and they are keeping all of their pictures and stuff that they shoved into the the business folders, etc. The connectivity to those devices. So again, as a business owner, we're paying for that connectivity, whether it be the internet, the voice, the cellular data, etc. So there's got to be some level of how it's used, and we can't be flooding it with just personal use. And then most critically, the actual data, your databases, your intellectual property, your branding, all of those sorts of things are obviously paid for by you. So we need to make sure that our employees understand that. And the best way to do that is to have some very clear policies. And the biggest one is to make sure that people understand what gets wiped, and I mean deleted, upon separation. So if somebody leaves the organization, if it's their device, that's great, but we need to make sure that we're going to turn off all of their accounts, and we're going to do a remote wipe on that device so that all of the company data disappears from it. And then the easiest way to do that is to make sure that people keep private use, private. I highly recommend, even on my own PC, I have two different logins. One logs me into my personal life, and I have my personal Office 365 and my personal stuff. Then I log in with business, and when I'm on the business side of this device, it's all business. There's no mixing the two. And that way it's easy for you if you need to delete an entire profile off of a machine. You're not going to have somebody come back and get angry because you deleted their favorite vacation photos or whatever. And that's probably the biggest concern with the bring your own device stuff.
We had a question pop up, Dan. Yeah. Besides people accessing company email on their phones, are you seeing many companies actually utilizing this bring your own device type of policy?
We are with the cloud side of it more so than the standard network. Definitely on the phones and tablets, but and I've seen it actually even on laptops. It's not uncommon for people to bring laptops to work, just like a mechanic would bring his tools to work. The issue there is, like I said, who owns the software, who owns the stuff. So making sure that it's clear whose stuff is whose is important. Much easier with the cloud because it technically doesn't have to remain on the device. If you do decide to go down that road, I think we kind of alluded to that. I would definitely start with phones first and then tablets. We do a stipend for our employees. They can get whatever phone they want. But the caveat there is, if they leave, they keep the phone number and the device, but we nuke everything that's on there from an email perspective or any apps that we may have provided, etc. And same with the tablets. You can use it, and that's great. So this is kind of fun. This is the first time we've done a half an hour. We got about 5 minutes for questions, so I'm about where I was hoping to be at the end. Is there anything else that kind of popped up there, Steve, throughout, or if anybody's online and wants to type in some more, please do so.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions, and if you guys want to type some more, I'll be monitoring the chat here so I can help out. We had somebody asking, what does Key Methods prefer for laptops? What's kind of our standard brand, and what do we typically sell?
Yeah, so we typically stick with Lenovo, Dell, and HP are probably our three primary brands. We stick with HP kind of on the high end, specifically in the server range, Lenovo's and Dell, and now the Microsoft Surfaces in a lot of cases for the laptops. Again, that doesn't mean that's the only thing that's good out there. It's just when we talk about standards, you can imagine having as humongous of a fleet as we manage, the more standardization you can do. We've got great relationships with our reps and things. So when something happens and we need to leverage a vendor, it's much easier to do when you bought thousands of something from somebody than if you bought 2 or 3 little one-offs. So
yeah, I'll just second that. We sell a lot of the Lenovo ThinkPads. Those have been great devices for us over the years. You'll notice if you go to a business conference somewhere, a lot of the corporations, that's what they're providing to their employees is a Lenovo ThinkPad. So it's a very good unit. There's different models of T540s, 440s, and it can range. But
yeah, and that's why I was kind of joking about the fashion. It's not the fashionista. I mean, it's a jet black, but the suckers, the titanium hinges. It can take a spill. It can take a little bit of a drop. So it's a ruggedized business computer. I mean,
it's a great workhorse. We've got another question here about laptops. Are you seeing a lot of companies just replacing any desktops, purchasing laptops just for the mobility and the flexibility of it?
Yeah, I still see a lot of desktops going out just because the price difference is pretty significant. So I wouldn't suggest just buying a laptop just because. I would definitely want to see somebody have a reason for mobility, whether that's bringing it home or bringing it to appointments, etc. Otherwise, it's not a 2-for-1, but you're paying a lot more for that mobility.
Okay, we've got another question here about monitors. Are you seeing people use the split screens, or a lot of people using just one large screen now? And what's the typical sizes?
That's an awesome question. What I'm really seeing is too many people hanging on to their friggin' monitors way too darn long. That's what I'm really seeing. So monitors almost never die. And there's been a lot of advances in just eye-strained, bigger screens for way cheaper. Used to be you couldn't get a big screen because it was so expensive. But now I'm seeing kind of a combination of both. There are the philosophies of one big screen. There's software you can run on it to basically make it operate kind of like 4 screens, and you can snap and do some different stuff there. And I know our controller, that's the way she's got like a big screen TV practically on her desktop. So that's the way she runs things. I prefer multiple monitors, and I kind of task them so that one monitor is, my communications, Skype, email, etc. Another one might be my PSA, ticketing system. So I like having my world in different segments. I'd say it's kind of personal preference, but certainly when you're buying something new, I would consider at some point in time, even though that darn LCD from the past won't die, find somebody to give it to and upgrade, because you'll thank yourself with the resolution. It's just crazy different, newer stuff, and they're not as expensive as they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll chime in there too. I mean, we're not selling any monitors below a 22-inch before.
Right.
5 years ago, 22-inch was the cream of
the deluxe
big monitor. So. As far as standard sizes, we sell a lot of 22s or 24s, and then if people want a single screen, 27 inches and up is pretty typical.
Yep.
Got another question here about what specs do you recommend for just a standard business class PC as far as processors and...
Yeah, I'm at least an Intel i5. I don't like hitting the 3s. That 3 is great for home, but I like to at least be an i5, probably an i7 if I'm going to, do anything powerful on it. Definitely an SSD drive. Definitely like 8 gig min on my memory. And again, if you haven't looked, make sure you know what does it cost to go from 8 to 16. Sometimes you might go, wow, that's not that much of a difference. It's not as expensive on some of the hardware as maybe it used to be. And if you look at the cost of labor to actually move all your stuff from one PC, your inconvenience, etc., it's probably better to buy up and hang on to something a little longer than it is to mess with it in a couple of years.
Yep. Let's see, we've got a question here about what would be a good tablet to take out on a construction job site.
Ooh, that's a good question. So there are very ruggedized devices, and we've sold some into the ag industry. We've sold some into kind of construction. if you think a laptop's expensive, those are really, really, really expensive. We're talking, you know, $4,000, $5,000 kind of expensive to get one of those guys hooked up. Honestly, for me, I would attempt to ruggedize something that's not quite as rugged by getting some, you know, good, you know, wrappers and things. You can beef up even a Surface pretty good with some protective screens and things. I don't know, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We've got a surveying company, similar type of situation. I can't remember the exact brand name. I want to say some kind of Tough Book something, but it was extremely expensive. And they ended up just buying some Surface Pros, getting some great cases for them, and going that route. And overall, I think they've been pretty happy with
Yeah,
that.
I think about the time where you can have a 2-for-1, like I could actually just throw in and still replace it and still be under. You got to really think about that.
Yeah. I wanted to chime in too, just an overall theme that we're seeing, especially here in Washington State, as minimum wage goes up. A lot of business owners are coming to us and want to talk about efficiency of keeping their hardware running. They don't want people waiting for computers to reboot. They don't want downtime anymore. So that's just a major theme that goes along with this, is just the rising labor rates. And
as well as the computers that are running all the automation that's on the machines.
Yes.
So most of the equipment that's being bought now is tied to some sort of a PC that goes down the manufacturing equipment or whatever equipment's going down too. So yes, I've seen that same exact trend, is investing a little bit more into the hardware and equipment side, because you want to make everything as fast as possible.
Yeah, so I guess our words of wisdom there would be, you know, really don't skimp on the hardware. Get stuff that's going to be faster, it's going to last longer, you're going to need less support, and it's not going to be as frustrating. So, you know, I think we nailed all those questions, Dan, and we came in at about 11:30 here. So,
alrighty. Well, sounds good. If anybody has any further questions, certainly you can email us outside of this, and we'll get back to you. And we will post this recording once we've distilled it down, and you'll get that out to the email list, right?
Yep.
All righty. Well, thank you again for taking your time to join us today, and we hope to do another one here not too long. Thank you. Bye-bye.